So we left off talking about the tree of life and how species become more, uh, not mature, they become more adapted to life on land the further away from the water they move. So here in the beginning, we talked about the bacteria and how bacteria went through the process of endosymbiosis, creating branches on the tree of life. And the branch that we've been focused on is the branch that has both mitochondria and chloroplasts. And we talked about the bryophyta, which are just some examples of those liverworts and mosses. And today we are going to move on up this tree to a group of plants that definitely can live nowhere near waterways. They can live up on top of mountains. They can live in deserts. They can live in areas where there is relatively little to no water at all. The group that we're going to discuss is called the gymnosperms. And I have I guess I don't. Okay, so the gymnosperms. Here, we're going to go ahead and write gymnosperms in. Gymnosperms are oh, you know what? We don't want to do that. I'm crazy. Before we do that, we're going to want to go off in this direction to what we call the seedless. We're going to have a divider here because the seedless plants are going to be different. So here we can write the gymnosperms. And we'll take that up this direction. But before we get there, I want to take a brief side out to talk about some very few plants on Earth that have no seeds. Seeds are important for being able to survive away from water because they can be carried and transmitted. They are a way that the baby plant can be protected from the outside world. But prior to that, we have what are called the seedless vascular plants. And the seedless plants, they do have to be near water. They're not going to be able to survive away from water like these guys over here. So they're just a step up from these that absolutely have to be in or near water. The seedless vascular plants need water to reproduce. So they can live most of their year without water, but then when it comes time to reproduce, they're going to need to be in water. So we've got the horsetails, and we'll have a picture of that, and the ferns, and we'll have a picture of that, and the whisk ferns, which I'll bet you've never even seen one, and club moss, which again, I'll bet you've never seen a club moss either, but I can kind of think that you have seen horsetails and plain old ferns because they're pretty common, especially in our area. Horsetails are found towards the coast in the redwoods and in like Ukiah, areas like that, and ferns themselves, you see those growing wild as well in those redwood forests, but in other forests as well. And they are a horticultural plant that people put in their houses or in their yards. The horsetails also are used more recently sort of as a modern home planting, and that's because they're sort of linear and they make like a little spike, and they can give a nice sort of landscape design to certain areas of the house. We'll look at those. Okay, so these guys don't produce seeds. They have, in the case of, I don't know about horsetails exactly, but in the case of the ferns, there's actually a little sperm with two flagella that swim around from fern to fern to, you know, make that reproduction happen. And that's, you know, ferns do that. Now, the gymnosperms are going to be our next branch, and these guys are going to produce seeds, but unlike the seeds of an almond or peanut or an apple seed or strawberry seed or an avocado seed, I'm trying to think of big old seeds. I know strawberry seed's not very big, but things that you've eaten maybe, where like a blackberry seed, that's a fairly decent sized seed, and so you've probably taken a bite out and got one in your mouth, and if you've ever crunched down on them, you know that they have like a hard covering and a soft inside. So these gymnosperms have a different seed system. Gymno or gym means naked. So these are referred to as the naked seed plants because they don't have, their seed does not have a covering, I guess, is one way to say it. So let's have a look. We've got the cycads. Cycads are also a popular plant in gardens. They produce what are called sago palms. I know that people in Biggs have these in their yards. They're like a squatty little palm tree with a bushy branch that comes out of them, and they produce a cone. Now that's something you probably wouldn't see unless you're a horticulturist. The cone that the cycad produces grows out of its base, and it looks, I don't know, I'll put up a picture. So there we have the cycads, and there's different types, but the ones that you're familiar with are the ones that are growing in people's yards in town. Then we see a ginkgo. Ginkgo trees are pretty distinctive because of their leaf pattern. Looks kind of like a fan, and they have parallel venation, which is something that you just don't see. And maybe it'd be fun to do a scavenger hunt to see if you could find a ginkgo tree and snap a picture of it and send it to me, or a sago palm, snap a picture of it and send it to me. Okay, so we've got cycads, ginkgo trees. There's another plant in this group called the welwitschia that you've never seen because they don't really exist in this part of the world. The welwitschia grows in Africa, I think mainly. And I'll post a picture of those. And the ephedra. Ephedra is a local plant, PH. And it was used as a tea by the settlers that came to this area a long time ago. And we also have the conifers. Conifers are all the pine trees and all the fir trees and all the junipers, all these cone-bearing plants. Conifers are the cone bearers, and there's a lot of them in our area. And you can see that either by people planting them in their yards or by going places up in the hills where conifers kind of rule the forest. So here we are. We have our seedless plants, and we have our naked seed plants, the gymnosperms, and different representatives of the gymnosperm. Now these guys can, like I said, live away from water, which is a big deal because when you get down here, you have to be in water at some point. And as we move up, we kind of get to the point where there's no water necessary anymore. And I'm going to post a picture guide to each of these if you have one at your neighbor's house or in your yard that you can kind of get to without breaking social distancing rules, it'd be kind of fun to snap a picture of it and get it to me. All right, so that's today. Have a good night.